Okay, we are live in the Surf Shack. I think that it's called. So, what's the story behind the Surf Shack? Like, what are we sitting in right now?
We are sitting in what I always wanted. A lot of people always wanted the big corner office. Now, I always wanted just a simple little office in the corner of my yard.
Yeah, actually bring that.
Oh,
yeah.
So I always wanted We're starting again?
No, we're good. We're rolling. We're live. We're going.
Have you ever done this before?
It was my first time. Okay, so I never wanted a big corner office. I wanted a simple little office in the corner of my yard. So it's a 5-second commute to my house. It's a 7-second commute to the beach and surf, which I took you guys up to.
Yeah.
And so this is where I do 90% of my work. I go into the big office or host different things, but I do most of what I do for the company, sales and marketing and overall strategy right from here.
And the reason is just to be closer to family, to this is just what you've always wanted. Do you just not like being in the office?
The office was never for me, and I've got a great partner who handles operations and management, and I'm more in charge of sales and marketing. And for what I do, it's really good that I stay out of any of the trenches and work on the bigger relationships. And I can do that really well right from here.
Okay.
Undisturbed.
So how do you transition into sales and marketing from being a builder and like purely a real estate investor to the build to rent company, but you're partnered with the builder? Like, how does that transition happen?
Well, we started this almost 10 years ago. And my now partner, he managed my properties, and him and his father had a small building company. And they said, what if we started to build our own properties instead of rehabbing older properties? And I said, all right. So we, together on the very first development, we threw in the development fees together and we built it. And it went okay at best. But we saw, a light at the end of the tunnel. Like, this has legs. This has a lot of advantages. And we worked together for, about 7 years. We did over $300 million in projects together. And then he said,
When you say $300 million, that's just the value of the homes that you guys own?
Yeah, that's what we built. That's what we built for our clients.
And sold off to other people? Sold
off to our clients. We keep some within the company, but,
So the company retains some?
We retain some properties, yeah, personally and within the company. But we also, we've always had the focus of being a concierge for investors. Both the small investors, we also work with family offices and some of the larger institutions, but, we have over 950 individual investors. So that's really our main vein. And that's what I brought to the company. I always, meeting Tom and Nick, 16 plus years ago, I just was out learning a lot. So I just built an investor base really all over the U.S. And when we started this, I had a lot of investors who were interested in Florida, interested in investing in a different way. And that's what I was able to bring to the table, just building relationships and really working with real estate groups like Rockstar that said, hey, we're looking for an outlet to get into Florida, to get into better properties. Can you help? And we would just team up. And then now I just decided at the end of last year, this is my main focus in real estate. My partner said, instead of just joint venture, why don't you come in as a full partner? And I said, okay. Jamie and I talked about it, and it just made sense for our family, for our goals, and for dividing our talents. Chris and I are very different. We really bring a good synergistic skill set together that we merge. Like Chris, here's the best I can say. My partner, Chris, you guys will meet tomorrow. He loves a spreadsheet. Me, I love a whiteboard. So we are very different with analytics, but also very different with creativity and big picture things. And when we blend it, it's worked really well.
Why did you leave California? Why Florida? You were living in California like full time, or you were just investing?
No. I lived there full time, and the writing was on the wall when I left there, like 2004. Where I was in Central California, a place called Bakersfield, which was not known for its glamour, but it had great pricing on properties, kind of like, I guess, for Toronto people, like a Hamilton or something. And it just got crazy. People from San Francisco, LA were coming into this little area, and they were paying $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 over appraised value for properties with no cash flow. And I was going, this is nuts. So I didn't know what was going to happen leading up to 2008, but I just knew we couldn't keep doing deals. Plus, the landlord laws in California were never my favorite. And so, coming to Florida, I started to look around Northeast Florida, some tips from some investor friends that we had. And the numbers I'd always been taught by mentors of mine to find were right here in Northeast Florida. So I decided I could live by the beach, great lifestyle, I had family in Florida, and I just made the move.
So you sold off all your California rentals?
Sold off almost all of them, kept a chunk of them, 1031 exchanged a good amount into here, and then restarted doing what I had done out in California, fixing up old foreclosure properties here in Florida.
Can you explain the 1031 exchange for all the Canadians?
Yeah, I guess that's different up there. 1031 exchange here just means if you sell a property, you can 1031 exchange it, which means you can take your profits and roll it. We got a fly.
Is that a regular occurrence in the
I don't know. That actually looked like a lightning bug, but I don't know what it was. Sorry about that.
Yeah, so guilty.
Yeah, that was Tom's fault coming in and out. So, but we, you sell the property and you have to get what's called an intermediary, and the intermediary will roll all of your funds into an account that you have to then roll forward into more properties, all your profits plus the same amount of debt. So let me give you an example. If I have a property I sell for $200,000 and I only have a $100,000 mortgage on it, I now have to roll that profit of $100,000 into 1, 2, 3 properties, whatever I decide to do, and then I have to take out the same amount of mortgage debt. It's like the U.S.'s way to say, hey, we want to keep the real estate market going. We want you to keep reinvesting back into it. And in exchange for doing that, we will defer the taxes. So all of that money moves forward tax-free, tax-deferred into more property. So when I left California, I was able to sell, these little houses I had and go into 2 or 3 houses here in Florida. So it worked really well.
Is that how most U.S.-based investors scale their portfolios, is by using that 1031 exchange to kind of keep building up and up and up?
I think that's one way that people can do it for sure. Another way is the more simple approach, which I think you guys do, where you plant seeds in a good property, and then the property does well over a few years, both with rental growth and appreciation, and then you just decide to refinance. You pull money out of the property, and you don't go to Vegas with that money or buy Rolexes or something like that. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but if you're being more of an investor mindset, you're going to take that money, you're going to dump it forward into more properties. So you leverage off properties you own to buy more properties. That's how I built my portfolio.
Whereas the 1031 is just if you're selling properties.
Just if you're selling. But the refi, you don't have to sell.
Yeah. Can international investors also do the 1031 exchange?
That's a great question. We're going to have to ask Tom and Nick's tax guy on that. I believe so, because it is within the U.S. So your U.S. tax would be deferred. I don't know about your Canadian tax.
Yeah.
Good question.
Okay. Follow up on that one.
Yeah.
But so build to rent, it makes a lot of sense. From your last podcast with Nick, you kind of explained the whole strategy: new construction, less problems, better tenants, stronger rents, less problems, more predictable problems, as Jamie was saying. So it makes a lot of sense, but this is coming from someone who's a very experienced real estate investor. Mm-hmm. What about somebody just starting out? Do you think build to rent is still a great solution for them?
I think it's a better solution, and here's why. Being in this game for a long time now, not only as an investor and working with investors, I've also gotten to go to a lot of events and do a lot of teaching. And the biggest kryptonite that I see for a lot of new investors here in the U.S. is they get sold on what I got sold on, some in the very beginning, is look, cheap is the best. Just get a really cheap property, buy it, hold it, it's going to work out. And the initial numbers they try to do show this really good cash flow. But what almost always happens is they underestimate their maintenance and repairs and their turnover costs. So they buy, let's say, 2 or 3 really rough properties, and they don't realize as rough as they are. They don't know they have as much deferred maintenance as they do. They might be in a tougher area than they realize, which brings about tougher management, harder tenants, more turnover. And they just get lambasted those first few years with maintenance, repairs, turnover. They throw up the white flag and they get out of the deal. Happens all the time. It's one of the biggest short-term, kind of killers of real estate dreams from what I've seen.
It's just the burnout factor.
It's just the burnout factor. And I always say, and this is kind of my lesson, where people say, what do you recommend to close family and friends are getting? What would you do differently? And I say, I would own less of better quality if I went back.
So if you could start back, I don't know when you started investing,
almost 24 years ago.
How old were you at the time?
I was 25. I'm 49 now. You just exposed my age.
Yeah.
Jeez.
You actually, in your last podcast, said you started investing in 98, and I was born in 95. And I
Oh,
okay, I really want to learn from this guy.
Yeah, so it's 98. So how many years? So it'd be 25 years.
Yeah.
It was 98 when I first started making offers on properties.
Okay, so if you could go back, 25-year-old Jim, are you starting with Bill Durant, knowing everything you know now? And could you have started with that?
I would start with Bill Durant if there was someone providing what we provide.
Yeah.
Because if you're a new investor and you're going to try to just build a house on your own, I don't recommend that.
Yeah.
If you can get someone to do it for you, I recommend it. The same way, I rehabbed a lot of old properties for investors as well, new investors. And I think that was a very smart move because if you don't have time, if you're not in the area, you don't have the subcontractors, you don't have the experience, that's taking a lot of risk off the table. And basically what I was getting it done for and even charging them to get a profit for myself was cheaper than they could have probably done it on their own. But it's always more of a risk with an older property. I mean, it's just always, we call it the 3-year curse because I've owned hundreds of these and I don't care, what it was. I could do a new roof, new heating and cooling, new plumbing, update kitchens, baths. In 3 years, I just knew that I had to up my maintenance and repairs budgets. My turnover seemed to be more. Now that, we're 9 years in on the Bill Durant, that 3-year curse hasn't hit on the overall portfolio we've done for ourselves or our investors. So I would go back and look at new construction, and I would do it. I would do it with someone helping me though. So actually, let me tell you this. We were just talking about today, Jamie and I. So we do what's called a build on your own lot program too. So let's say, someone from Rockstar is like, hey, I actually own a lot. My uncle got me blah, blah, blah in Palm Coast or Jacksonville. We're like, great. Do you want us to build the property for you? So we'll do a build on your own lot. You bring us the lot. We'll set up pricing and specs to build the house for you. So Alden, who you guys just met, my 20-year-old, has saved up and, I know there's some people who get their first kid, their investment property at age 12. I just didn't agree with it. It didn't feel right. Like I'd be doing the lifting. They wouldn't really be doing it. He helps us with those properties, but I wanted him to be in a position where he could support himself to have a property. So he's just about to pull the trigger. Well, we're talking now about finding a lot in St. Augustine, and he's going to do a build on your own lot with our company. So that should tell you if I believe in it or not, because now for my next generation, I'm telling them, I'm saying, look, if we can get you something newer and better and maybe build you a duplex and you're going to live in one side and then rent the other side, this is a great first step for your real estate wealth.
I guess coming from Canada, it's kind of hard to wrap my head around new construction being able to cash flow.
Right.
Whereas here in these markets, these new builds seem to produce cash flow.
Yeah. Well, there's two things that make that happen. One is, you guys are about 3 times our pricing right now in the Greater Toronto area.
Yeah.
So it's the buy-in price.
Is that dollar adjusted though?
It's dollar adjusted.
Dollar adjusted.
So I know we just did
from Northeast Florida, Jacksonville.
From Northeast Florida, Jacksonville. I believe if you look at Jacksonville with dollar adjusted, we were at $299,000 for the average Jacksonville home. You go to Hamilton, you guys are at $595. Mm-hmm. So you're talking a huge jump. And that's just Hamilton. Forget about, I know you guys don't do as much in Toronto, but the Toronto, it's even more. So you're almost double, and the rents were not that much higher for what we're getting, and that is dollar adjusted.
And do you have a similar dynamic between, let's say, Orlando or Miami to the communities that you're in, maybe a smaller city like Jacksonville? That's probably the biggest community you're in.
Yeah.
But Palm Coast or Ocala, these other kind of smaller things, it's just the shoulder markets that give you that spread?
Well, we are not in Orlando. We are not in Tampa. We're not in Miami. And that's very on purpose. Our job is to find cash flow, but also fundamentals of growth. Is there economic growth in the area? Is there population growth? The affordability index is huge. This is something I talk about and teach about all the time. Affordability index is what is the average price of a home compared to the average family income for that area. And in the areas we go into, I guess would be considered second tier, that's a very healthy number. They're also desirable. They're behind on housing. So that's where you want to be as a builder or an investor, these types of growth areas. Miami, Orlando, Tampa, obviously great areas, but you're buying I mean, you're going back to why we do what we do. You're getting higher pricing. The cash flow hasn't gone up with it. And that's more of a risk. And we don't want to put ourselves or our investors in a bigger risk.
Could you make an argument, though, for the value of being in those, high demand, amazing cities, the most popular cities in Florida, or just the cash flow won't allow you to scale at any rate because just everything negative cash flows so badly that you can't really scale a portfolio?
You can make an argument for it, but I can tell you this: I've made more money with appreciation, but I do my best to get in its way with cash flow involved. Mm. Because when for the things I've done in California and here, the difference, especially if you're going to scale the properties, of spending money every month as opposed to getting money in your pocket, the returns have just been better. So like if Jacksonville, great market, if you had invested $250,000 with us in Jacksonville 5 years ago, your annual return on investment based on equity growth and cash flow was just about 69% a year. That's over the last 5 years. So the way I see it is, if we can find these markets, we can have our cake and eat it too. Because the buy-ins are so well and they're still adjusting up that I think we can match the prices of the bigger ones without a bleed every month. Sorry,
you said 69% over the 5 years or?
Year after year, annually.
Annually.
Our properties, and we'll show this tomorrow, again, if you put $250,000 into Jacksonville properties with the average 20 or 25% down with our properties, and we've gone back and we've done hundreds of these, you would have made 69% a year each year over the last 5 years. About $127,000 return every year. That's how much the properties have gone up.
So did you guys have a huge lift with COVID, with all the money printing?
A lot of money printing, yes. So
do you attribute that to kind of those outrageous returns?
Well, I think we do. But also, Florida's always been underpriced. So right now, again, Jacksonville, median price is about $299,000, right? You go to somewhere like Salt Lake City or Boise, Idaho, great markets where a lot of Californians left to come out of. Well, they're right again at $595, $620. So they're at twice the price, but their rents are about the same and the average income for tenants is about the same.
Yeah.
So we're still way underpriced.
Can you explain the economics behind that? Like, I've never understood why you can have higher prices in a different area, but the rents don't match those prices. Like I saw on your slide where you compared Boise, Idaho, mm-hmm. and also Salt Lake, and the purchase prices were much higher than, let's say, Jacksonville.
Yeah.
But the rents you're getting in Jacksonville, I think, were higher than Salt Lake, and it was just underneath maybe the Boise, Idaho one for houses that cost way more there. So I just don't understand that. You would think if prices are higher, like rents would.
You would think
equal.
There's no exact science.
Yeah.
I've never seen an exact science in California, here in Florida, working with other investors and networking with them all over the U.S. There's just no exact science.
Yeah, because it's the same case with Toronto versus even St. Catharines or Hamilton, where just the rent to price ratio is just much better in the shoulder markets. And I just never understood that. Like, why doesn't the rents catch up to the higher prices?
Well, sometimes too, I think it has to do with job growth too. If the area has not experienced job growth or income growth, and that's one thing with Florida, that through the pandemic, incomes went up a lot in Florida. More people were coming here. There was more demands for good help, and it scaled up. But if the income's not going up, I think it's also hard to raise the rents. And there could be a desirability of life, like Salt Lake and Boise are beautiful areas.
Yeah.
But if, that's more emotion that brings up the price, not really investing fundamentals.
Yeah. So the narrative in Canada, when it comes to Florida and maybe Texas, is that there's huge migration coming in from other states, and like a bunch of people are leaving LA and New York City. Is that really the case of what's happening?
Very much so. That's absolutely true.
And it's continued even post-COVID? Because I know a lot of that was kind of due to the tight COVID restrictions in those states.
Yeah, but
there's also
for the people that haven't,
and the landlord laws.
So when I left California, I saved 9.9%. I made 9.9% because there was a state income tax and there's no state income tax. Now that state income tax is 13.5% in California. So people get tired of paying it. They did not agree with the rules, and they say, hey, if something like this could happen, none of us thought anything like COVID could happen again. Mm-hmm. But it has. It could. And if it does, they don't want to be caught behind the lines of areas where they think there's going to be less freedom opposed to more freedom.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure Toronto's felt a little bit about that as well.
100%. Yeah. So, okay, another maybe, I don't know, narrative that's up in Canada about the USA is like how politically divided the country is.
Sure.
Left versus right. Is that truly the case? Is that more so media narrative?
Well, the media's job is to stir the pot between everybody. Yeah. They just want ratings, and they'll favor one side more than the other. And there is definitely a divide, but I have friends on all sides, and we don't have to agree on everything. But for me, the divide is only important business-wise and investing-wise on a few fundamentals. People don't have to agree with me on certain things, and that's fine, but I'm not going to go to a state where a landlord is frowned upon. Mm-hmm. Where if I have this old-fashioned value, that if I buy a property and keep it in good condition, it's my right to collect rent on it without guilt and without being, in trouble for it. So
pretty old school.
Pretty old school. I guess that's an old school value. So I think there is some divide on different things, and people go to states that kind of match more their values, and that's fine. And my values as far as rental concern is I want to be in a state where it's landlord friendly.
Yeah. So if you're trying to hedge against political risk in the U.S., what are you looking at? You're looking at the landlord laws primarily, or are you looking at?
I'm looking at state income tax. I'm looking at, are they business friendly? I'm looking at the draw to the area. Do they encourage business or discourage business? And those are probably two of the biggest. Because if you're discouraging business, you're going to keep losing business. At least that's the equation I believe in.
Yeah.
And if you start to, I know people that could not collect rent for 10, 14 months through COVID.
Yeah.
When we were not only collecting rent, but if people decide not to pay unscrupulously, then they're out in 40 days. And as a landlord, again, I learned a lot of lessons in California. A lot of them, Anthony. And my heart was bigger than my head. I collected a lot more stories than I did rent in the beginning, and that could have bankrupted me. So I've learned my charity and my rentals are completely separate. We give a lot to charity and causes we care about, but that's not the same as my rental portfolio.
Yeah, it's not the intention, right?
No.
Have you had to evict a tenant in Florida?
Absolutely.
Okay. Absolutely. What was that process like?
You're done in 40 days.
40 days, tenants out.
Tenants out. And a lot of, when you have certain rules in place too, if a tenant look, you're in parts of Northern California, they know they can go a year and a half. Yeah. What's the motivation to leave? Yeah. When a tenant here knows that, hey, we're going to be out in 40 days, normally it doesn't even go to eviction. And again, remember, I've owned hundreds of properties here in Florida. So of course, with my numbers, I'm going to have some evictions. However, I can tell you this, most of the time it never goes to eviction. Most of the time that they're out, they take what's called keys for cash. Hey, we're going to let you out. We want the property in good condition, broom swept, take back. Here's $200, moving money to help you. Or, if it's in good enough condition, we'll give a partial deposit back because we just want the asset back, right? And I can tell you, most of those evictions that I ever suffered over the last 20 years here in Florida were in older houses in worse areas. That's why I do new construction now in better areas.
So you're doing cash for keys for just a couple $100?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I did $6,000 cash for keys to get a tenant out.
You live in California, huh?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, Ontario, it's actually worse. Wow. Okay. What else? Evictions. Oh, what about raising rent? So you don't have rent control.
Yeah, that was. Did you see how shocked I was when I was at that powwow at Rockstar? You guys were trying to explain it to me in a long way. What do you mean? I don't get it.
Yeah.
And I've never heard of anything like that.
Well, so we've never heard of just being able to raise rent, just
Jacksonville,
as much as you want.
In 1 year between 2020 and 2021, rents in Jacksonville went up on average 25%. 25%. Because they were undervalued, really. They always had been in Jacksonville, and so that was a good boost up to get them more like where they should be. But yeah, no one was stopping it.
And the demand was just coming in, so you were able to raise the rent.
the demand was there.
So what does raising rent actually look like? Like, do you just have to keep it within reason? Otherwise, the tenant's going to be like, okay, leave somewhere else. You have to keep it within the market bounds.
You want to keep it within the market bounds. And for our management companies, like our portfolio managers, they'll have the conversation with our clients and say, look, we think we should stay where we're at. It's probably not worth it right now. And there's different ups and downs in the market that I've seen the last 9 years of that, where stay where it's at, or no, let's boost it 50, or during COVID, it's like, I think you can raise the rents $500 on a $1,200 unit.
So on average, how much are you guys raising the rent?
That's going to be right now around 8 to 9% annually. Really? So it's still a growth thing. So yeah, definitely over your 2%.
Yeah,
because you guys have a 2% cap, is that right?
2%
changes every year.
But actually, I think it's 2.5%.
Changes all the time.
It changes every year. Yeah.
No, it is a total free market when it comes to rents here. Now there are areas in the U.S. that have rent control and such. New York City, San Fran, and that. Not here, not in the second tier markets in Florida. There might be a few areas in Miami. I'm not sure, but I don't focus on the Miami market at all. I'll go through it on my way to the Florida Keys, but that's about all I know about the Miami market.
Are you getting a lot of pushback from tenants when you raise rents? Is it just generally accepted that this is the way it goes?
Yeah, it's so mysterious to us. Yeah.
I guess it's more of a cultural norm for our rental way down here that you get a raise in rents. And like I said, there'll be some years you might say, let's just keep it where it's at. You don't want to lose a tenant trying to get a 9% raise and then have them leave and have to pay for the turnover and then the refill. So it varies from year to year.
So your property management company is like working with people, trying to make it work for everyone. Like, so if there is a huge pushback on, let's say, the 9%, they might raise. Yeah,
they might say, you don't want to lose this part. Yeah, every property is an individual negotiation.
And it's treated that way with your property management.
Absolutely.
It isn't like a blanket across the board, we're raising rent.
No. We're going to look at individual properties, individual comps for that certain area, because maybe Ocala had a much stronger one this year than like a part of Jacksonville or something. So, remember, we're in 12 different markets. So we could not just blanket and say, yep, 9% across the board, all 12 markets go.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you'd be cheating certain people. Other times that year, you might be putting them in danger of losing a good tenant, and not being able to get that higher price that you're trying to get anyway, if that makes sense.
Anthony, did you ask the closing process with an investor and then property management? Like, how does that look when an investor acquires the property? Did you go through that?
No. Oh. No. Do we? All right, let's cover that.
Yeah. So
closing process.
So yeah, I know we just did collaborative with our team and Rockstar team, the 7 steps to buying in the U.S. And the biggest difference we see with a property between, let's say buying here in Florida to where you guys are, is just that initial setup. Because you got to get some structuring set up to be able to buy in the U.S. as a Canadian. Obviously, and I know Tom and Nick have a great guy to help with that entity structuring and bank account setup. But really from there, it's a pretty straightforward process. So let's say, Anthony, you're like, Jim, I loved what we saw today. I want to do the duplex. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to get you the Tom and Nick's entity guy, our Canadian expert. He's going to get your bank account set up. He's going to get your entity set up. Then we're going to pick a property. Probably one of the properties like, I like that one that we saw. You're going to work with one of our sales specialists that will go through the pro forma with you, talk about the property, and then, the different financing options that we have for our Canadian investors. And you say, all right, I want to do it. It's a standard, Florida real estate contract. You're going to be able to sign on that. You put down a deposit. After you put down a deposit, we keep you a part of the process. So you're involved but never alone. From the contract to the appraisal for your lender to the inspection, because you still want to do an inspection on every property, I think, because even though it's new construction, get it inspected. If anything gets called, we need to fix it. Why not do that? The insurance. Our sales specialist is going to refer you to the people that have done our insurance. I know I gave some good insurance stories on stage, to show we know how to shop insurance. And then the property management transition, we're going to introduce you to the leasing department and then to your portfolio manager. So during that process of getting the house going, your loan, finalizing the house and closing, you'll be transitioning over into property management. At the time of closing them, we're going to have set up for your bank accounts, where we're going to wire the rental funds, the assignment of your portfolio manager, and then you'll do a follow-up call 7 days after closing and 30 days after closing with your sales specialist just to make sure, hey, is there any questions? Is there anything of confusion? but it's a pretty straightforward process. I'm sure that probably sounds like Rockstar. The only difference is that initial upfront, structuring for you to be able to come over the border the right way.
Yeah. So you have financing options that allow Canadians with zero credit score, zero banking history, anything, zero income in the United States to be able to purchase properties.
Yeah. And this is a huge switch. I mean, Tom and Nick and I have been looking at this for almost 17 years. Just in the last 18 months, they're starting to become international financing. Instead of having to pay cash, you're talking 30 to 40% down. And I know some Canadians go, hey, well, we're used to 20 or 25. Yeah, but our properties are also a third of the price. So when you start to do the math, it's about equal.
Yeah.
And, the banks are taking more of a risk because it's not your credit. It's more the property. There's a small bit of qualification, which our lender will go over again on Saturday. And he went over with the big Rockstar group last time. Yeah. But it's very minimal.
So once you financed a couple properties here, are you establishing credit history once you've done that?
Oh, definitely.
And then does that open you up to new and potentially better financing options?
I think it offers you better financing options and then possibly other banking lines and such, but you want to get probably a 2-year history. The one thing I can tell you is we are doing special financing for our Canadian buyers where our banks are very different than your banks right now. You have to realize this inflationary effect. You guys have done a great job keeping interest rates low. If, as an American, if you come in to a normal mortgage company right now and say, I want to buy a duplex or a quad, they're going to quote you probably like 8.5%. So it's a high interest rate. However, we're doing these pre-mortgage buys for our international investors. We're getting at 6.25%. Now you guys are saying, oh, but our rates are much lower. But I can tell you at 6.25%, you're cash flowing. And we expect our Fed, because our Fed has a history of this. I know Tom and Nick have talked about this. Anytime they've shot up this quick, within about 24 months, they have to start trailing backwards. And they have a history over 80-something years of doing this. We're expecting rates to go down at least 2+% sometime over the next 18 to 24 months. Mm-hmm. So we believe that's going to be a refinance opportunity even for you guys from the 6.25% to possibly even lower.
Well, 6.25% is basically where we're at in Canada right now.
I'm surprised. Yeah. I thought you guys were lower.
No,
on some maybe a little bit lower.
Yeah. It depends, right? Okay. But rentals, you're looking 6.5.
Okay, so then we're doing better than we thought. I thought we were even higher.
So I've seen a couple of your performance, and it was like special financing rate as low as 4.75%.
That's for our U.S. buyers.
That's U.S. buyers.
Yeah. I would love to do what I can do for my U.S. buyers for you guys, but I can tell you I'm real happy we're able to do what we do because, again, us looking at this for so many years, we couldn't get anything but cash. And then we would hear about a 50% down loan program, and then no one could ever really get it done. And it was like stupid double digits, interest, all sorts of extra fees, and, that didn't make us feel very good.
So what's the case against Build to Rent or against Florida, if you had to make one?
If you don't like collecting rent,
you don't like
warm weather,
you've moved, I think, a lot, if not all of your portfolio here.
I have nothing left in California.
Yeah. So
I sold my last one a few years ago.
Only Costa Rica.
Oh, Costa Rica.
Only Costa Rica. But that's like a vacation property. Or is it?
Well, we rent it, and we live there part-time and then rent it as well.
Okay.
So different. That's a cash market as well. So a beautiful market, but cash. But let me tell you.
About 5 minutes and wrap it up. End with the book.
A big one, insurance. So we hear about hurricanes. Let's talk about the 800-pound gorilla in the room. What about hurricanes? We had heard about hurricanes, things about hurricanes. So the last big one that came through, Hurricane Ian, was Category 5 at one point, that's the top. That's as big as you can get. When the eye of the storm went over Fort Myers and Punta Gorda, we have hundreds of projects going on in that area. New construction is different. They changed the rules in 2004, as we were talking about before when I took you up to the beach. And you said, is this the 14-foot that you have to build? Yeah, even more when you're building oceanfront. Yeah. But for the new rules, you got to build higher. You got to build the stronger structural integrity. And we saw a test phase that we really didn't want to go through, but we went through. We had no flooding on any of our properties, and we had 4 that we had to file insurance claims on. That's when it's more than $5,000 worth of damage. And these 4 properties, we were in that beginning stage. We had just put up the block walls, freestanding. There was no roof tied on. So when there's just these walls and the winds came, the winds knocked it down.
So it wasn't even built yet.
It wasn't even built yet. And so what happens is, first of all, that gives you a nice level of safety for the newer construction because it's built to that higher ground. You're avoiding flooding or anything like that, and they can withstand winds. But also for overall cash flow and cost, our insurance, like we're sitting in my house right now, right? This was built in 2004. If we could go down the road on this small barrier island to some of the, older houses that were built in 1952, they're a third of the size of my house. Their insurance will be 4 times as much.
Wow.
Because they're on that lower ground. They're not analyzed well by the insurance company, so they charge more. For our people doing new construction and our preferred insurance guys, they're like, oh, we love your houses. Sure, we'll insure it, and we'll insure it for this price. That's where one of the things people get the most surprised seeing our performers. They're like, did you just make up this insurance number? How are you getting this insurance number? We said, well, here's our insurance guy. Go ahead and call him. He gave us the number for this house, and we've built a lot of these, and he's already insured them. So that's
you guys are always 5 miles inland?
Not always, but a lot of the times.
Yeah, and that's because of the hurricanes.
Because it's just, first of all, land's always a little cheaper to get into, but the rents are good still, and you're still close to. But once you go at least 5 miles inland, that's a marker point for a lot of insurance analysts, where they'll start to downgrade the risk of being too close. Like, look, where we all are sitting right here, I take a big risk. I'm on a barrier island. It's only 10 houses wide. I want water on both sides for me and my kids to play in and have that kind of water lifestyle. And I just keep insurance on my property. But this is not where we build our build to rent type properties. It's where I want to live. And because
you're paying a premium on insurance being in this location.
I'd be paying a premium on this property, although I'm paying a lot better insurance rates on this house since it's a newer construction and built better than some of the older houses that are just down the road here, comparatively.
Yeah, cool. So you have a book coming out, the Passive Income Playbook.
Passive Income Playbook.
Yeah, I listened to the first 3 chapters, like the audio.
Give me the honest. Did you like it?
I did. Yeah, it was cool just hearing your journey because coming from Canada, you're like this big shot US-based real estate investor.
Oh, James.
Golly.
So
I hope my wife just heard that.
So it was impressive to see.
He's a big shot. He's a big shot.
They're both big shots. Like in Canada, we have HGTV. So I don't know what the US equivalent is. If you have it's HGTV, probably started in America.
Well, then people are like, "Oh, do you know the Property Brothers?" I'm like, "Nick and Tom, yeah."
My mom says that I guess it's on HGTV, like Chet and Joanne or Chip and Joanne.
Chip and Joanne.
He's like the loose cannon, and she's like.
Yeah. But it's funny to hear that. It's like a legend in my own mind. It's like I'm humbled. It's like,
well, you're talking about hundreds of homes, and it seems crazy to have managed all that. But then to transition to this, it was interesting to hear your full story, right? From the flipper, rehabber, kind of HGTV guy, in my mind at least.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I
appreciate it. To the build to rent thing. So no, I really liked it, and I thought it tied perfectly with your guys' family. What is it? The family board meeting. What sticks out to me is the 18 summers, right?
Yeah.
Talk to me about the book. When's it coming out? What's it all about?
The book is going to come out first quarter of 2024. I know that Nick and Tom are going to get some copies out to the Rockstar community. And it's just kind of our journey. It was our the first model I did in real estate. I was full of excitement. It almost bankrupted me. And the second model, which Nick and Tom came down to visit, it made money, but it was almost bankrupted my time. And that's not your life, your terms. And it was really about 10 years ago I hit stride when I was able to buy back my time. And for me, it was that legendary family life. And so there's no ego in that. People know that just means I didn't come from anything. So I wanted to be able to do all the things I dreamed of having as a kid or being able to do as a kid and we couldn't do as a family. I could do it with my own family. And, my dad was a big part of my life and I lost him last year on Christmas. And I said, all the things my dad dreamed of doing and couldn't do, I'm going to do them for him. So that's, for me, the legendary family life. And honestly, Build to Rent has absolutely been the core nucleus of being able to do that, of being able to do the family board meeting 18 summers. And it's where I've made my investor clients the most amount of money ever.
Yeah. So you share your journey in the book. You share how you can also do it.
just kind of our principles around real estate, how Bill Durant came onto our spectrum when we built a business out of it, and have worked with a lot of investors, and also kind of we go kind of in the backstage of our family life, because a lot of people say, hey, we want to enjoy family life. We want to make the most of the time we have. And we talk about, we don't know how to teach out of a perfect family, but we can teach you how to bridge your imperfections and make the most of the time. And so we share a little bit of that, of our story, which Jamie and I have been wanting to do for a long time.
Cool. So if anyone wants to reach out to you guys, how do they do so? What's the process?
Yeah. Just what I'd recommend is Nick and Tom and I have kind of been scratching our heads on this for the last year. And so the Rockstar team is really aligned with this right now. I'd reach out to you. I'm working with a property counselor at Rockstar. Talk to them about us, first, and then they can reach out to us. jjplaybook.com is a great starting point, where it's kind of a little bit about our book and our Bill Durant journey, where they can learn about the Bill Durant model. And once you talk with your leader at Rockstar, you're going to be able to talk to some of our team members.
Yeah.
And they're excited to be meeting with a bunch of your guys this weekend, and they'll be there to assist you the same way they have hundreds of other calls. They'll be able to get some more information, some performance, some of our videos, and then also set up a discovery call. There's no obligation, but you can start to see what can you do. And a lot of people have already done that.
And you've got 2 people on your team, especially assigned to helping out.
Tim and Jen assigned to our team. Jen has been, one of our right-hand sales leaders for 14 years now. So she's worked with international investors and Tim as well. So you're in great hands. And so we felt they were probably the best 2 counterparts to work with the Rockstar team as well.
And so they're set up to work with the Rockstar community.
They're ready to go, along with 2 of our lenders, and along with them, 2 of our lenders and Nick and Tom bringing in that important piece of the entity structuring and banking. Yeah. I think we've covered all the pieces.
Yeah, cool. I think that's it, man.
Excellent. Well, I'm excited to have you guys here. Yeah. Thanks for being here in the Surf Shack.
Yeah, the Surf Shack is awesome. I definitely want one of these. Cool. Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. You can find every new episode of the Your Life, Your Term show on all the major streaming platforms. So Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. And if you'd like to get free copies of some of the books that we've put together, like these right here, or some of the reports that we've put together, like these right here, you can find all of those at www.rockstarinnercircle.com. That's www.rockstarinnercircle.com. That's it for now. Until next time, your life, your terms.